Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing Seven Wonders Architects, which is the newest iteration of the Seven Wonders line of games, starting with the original Seven Wonders back in, well, quite some time ago, and then followed up with Seven Wonders Duel, which quickly overtook Seven Wonders in the Board Game Geeks rankings, and now we have the newest iteration, Seven Wonders Architects. This is the core gameplay of Seven Wonders, but simplified, taking away some mechanisms and just making it a very quick, simple, and easy game to play. The goal of the game is to ultimately end with the most points. Points are primarily going to come through building out your wonder, but you can get points through a variety of other things, including winning combats, including various point cards, including even just having this cat at the end of the game. The gameplay is going to involve you on your turn taking a single card and then potentially taking actions with the cards you currently have. So for example, you could take the card, if I'm this player over here controlling the Colossus and this deck, then I can take one of the cards from this deck, or the center. In a 3-player game, you basically have access to almost everything, but the more players you have, you're still only going to be able to draw a card from the center or the deck to your left and your right, not your own. That means you effectively have 3 choices as far as where you take cards from, although you can't even see the center deck unless you currently control the cat, in which case you can see the center deck before you pick, effectively saying, well, you know what, this card's actually pretty helpful for me, I'm going to grab that card. Play is going to go around and around and around, and whenever you have the opportunity to take certain actions, you'll have to take those actions. It keeps the gameplay moving pretty quickly. If you can build a stage of your wonder, you must do so. Stages of your wonders will often require either multiple of the same type of resource or multiple of different types of resources. If combat will occasionally be triggered as you draw different military cards. Whenever you draw a military card, you're going to add to military might, but whenever those military cards have horns on them, you're going to go ahead and add, over here, if you take this card, you're going to flip 2 of these cards, these tokens over here, and when all those tokens are flipped, combat will ensue, again, between players and their neighbors. The victor will get 3 points per combat that they win. Whenever you have either 2 of the same science symbol or 3 different ones, you'll be able to take a science token from either the 3 over here or from the face-up pile, and those will give you a bit of a tableau building engine, something that you're better at than other players. This card, for example, is that whenever you take another science card, you'll be able to take another card, so basically doubling up your action when you take science cards. This card is going to give you a card, this token is going to give you a card whenever you build a stage of your wonder. So they're going to give you different ways to either earn points or ways of building up more powerful actions as you go through the game. The blue cards will give you points, and that's basically Seven Wonders Architects. Few small rules I'm neglecting, things like the fact that different wonders will have different benefits on them. Some wonders, the Pyramid of Giza will give you just straight up points, but all other wonders will give you certain benefits when you hit certain stages. So the Colossus of Rhodes will give you military symbols, this one over here will give you science tokens, and this one over here will let you take cards from the piles to your left and your right, basically giving you a few extra cards as you build out your stages of wonders. Rinse and repeat until a single player finishes their wonder, and the game end will immediately be triggered, and that is Seven Wonders Architects. Which brings us straight to the review part of things. Fairly quick, easy game to explain. As far as the review things, ease of play. The rulebook is incredibly easy to dive into. This is the entire rulebook. You unfold it 3 times, and that's your rules. Back and front, not a lot going on here, and half of that is basically, well, a full section of this is symbols, this is the front. You're pretty much left with 4 pages of rules that are incredibly easy to dive into. I would say even easier if you know the existing Seven Wonders game, but I don't even think you really need that. The game is a very simple game to teach, to understand. The playtime is very accessible. I've played this one, we'll get to this in player count, but I've played this at a variety of player counts, and it generally comes in somewhere around the half-an-hour range. It could drag a little bit with newer players and larger player counts, but usually you're looking at 20 to 40 minutes for a game of Seven Wonders Architects. The table space is going to potentially be the biggest problem at higher player counts. Right here, a 3-player game, it takes up basically nothing at all, but every player is going to add their own deck and their own architect, and then space for cards. I have it a little more compressed than I normally would for this space over here. So at higher player counts, it'll take up a bit more space, but nothing that significant. As far as player count, this is a 2 to 7 player game. I have played this at 3, 5, and 6 players so far. For myself, I would say this functions at all player counts listed. Again, I haven't played it at 4, and I haven't played it at 7, but from having played it at a variety of player counts, I think this functions well at all player counts. Even at a 6-player game, gameplay moves fast-paced. You're going to take a card, take actions, take a card, take actions. Most of the time, you're not even taking actions because you often need several cards to execute an action. And there's very little decision space around those actions because whenever you can do something, you have to. If you have science symbols, you have to take a science token. If you have resources to build a wonder, you have to build out your wonder. So since that takes a lot of agency or choice away from your turns, which does mean that the gameplay is very fast moving. The real choice you're making every single turn is where to take a card from. The center, the left, or the right, everything else after that is fairly scripted for you, which means the game moves fairly quickly as you take a card, next person take a card, next person, and occasionally do something with your cards. As far as interaction at the player counts, interaction is fairly low. You're going to have the combat aspect where you're going to compare your combat to other players' combat. At the end of combat, you lose all military symbols, all military cards that have horns on them. You keep all other military cards, so a little bit of tableau building's coming through there, but combat will be a little bit of the player interaction, and then past that being mindful of the fact that you always share a deck with another player. So this deck over here, I can take from, but so can they. So you want to be a little bit mindful about what that other player on each side is going for, to have a little bit of choice around eyeing what people are likely to take when it's your turn and what you're taking. But fairly minimal interaction, just a little bit about the card choice and then the combat rounds. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking. Starting off with what I like, this game is incredibly simple and easy to teach, to engage, to play it. It's rewarding in the semi-addicting nature of just grabbing a card and then doing something fun with it. Whether you're building a wonder, whether you're getting science, whether you're adding to your military, it's just very quick-paced. Draw a card, get something good, draw a card, get something good. Rinse and repeat until the game is over. The sciences for me are the best part of the game because that represents the biggest part of the tableau building, the biggest part of actually building up an engine as opposed to drawing and cashing in, drawing and cashing in. The sciences will give you something fun to go for. You're going to start going for different types of things. Maybe you start drawing a military science that will reward you whenever you take military cards, giving you a little bit of an additional push to go in that direction. So the tableau building will come from the sciences, which are my favorite part of the game. As far as things I don't like, I do have a bit of a nitpick around the rules, which is the ending of the game is, and this is a small thing and it's easily house ruled, but it did bother me. The game ends as soon as a player finishes their wonder. There's no additional incentive as far as starting player bonuses or anything like that to balance turn order, which basically means the game has a strong first player advantage, because as soon as whoever goes first has more turns, inherently more or equal turns than everyone else. There's no, finishing the round at the end. There's no compensating factor for going second or third or anything like that. So for the sake of a simplified rule set, which I have to imagine was the reason for this, they basically gave the first player an advantage that could just as easily have been written out as when someone finishes their wonder, finish the round until all players have an even number of turns. It doesn't require that much additional rules or understanding, and it would have been just as simple a game without having a small little, extra for the first, second, third player, etc. As far as things you should be aware of in the game, as far as things I can see others not liking, first of all, there's the luck of the cards, which is not a huge thing, but especially when you're drawing cards face down, if you don't currently have the cat, you could have cards that are more situationally beneficial for yourself or others, or even the decks next to you. You might find that the cards that are revealed on top of the decks adjacent to you don't really play into your strategy. So there is a small amount of luck of the draw just around the general availability of the cards and how they work with what you're doing for the game. Secondly, the game ending can feel a bit anticlimactic. This is a little different than that first player aspect, but you get to the end of the game and very often you're left with extra resources. You're kind of waiting to just do those last few things, and the game just kind of cuts to a straight halt. So potential slight anticlimactic aspect to the game as far as, that. As far as final thoughts on Seven Wonders Architects, you may have noticed that my review was short on both having a large what I liked section, as well as having not a lot on what I don't like section as well. Seven Wonders Architects is very much in that zone for me. It's a game that doesn't particularly shine for me, but nor is there a lot that I don't like. I've enjoyed my plays of Seven Wonders Architects. It's simple, it's fun, it's engaging, it's rewarding, but it also doesn't really pull me in that much. I think it's an accessible game. I think it's an easy game. I think it builds on the foundation that Seven Wonders brought to the table. But it also feels like they removed some of my favorite parts of Seven Wonders. The reason I like Seven Wonders, the drafting of Seven Wonders, the tableau building of getting resources and getting powers and getting things that slowly build up so you actually feel like you're building up an empire over time. Seven Wonders Architects doesn't feel like you're building an empire. It feels like you're building a wonder, which might be the intent of the game, but at no point do you feel like you're actually getting better. You're just doing the same thing until the game ends. there is a semi-addicting feeling of just, I want that card so I can do my thing. It does have that appeal to it. It is a totally fine game. I'm happy I played it. I'm happy it exists. I think it's accessible. I think the graphic design is excellent, and I think it's a really good entry-level game. But I think for me, that's the key. Those are the key words. I think it is an entry-level game, especially when I'm coming from the framework of knowing that Seven Wonders exists, of having Seven Wonders and Seven Wonders Duel in my collection, and feeling those are both accessible games that give me a little bit more reason to dive into it. For me, Seven Wonders Architects is a 3 out of 5. It is a totally solid, fine experience, but also not one that I'm particularly looking to dive back into, although understand that that may be biased by my loving Seven Wonders and Seven Wonders Duels, and feeling that this is a step backwards in strategy, a huge step forward in terms of accessibility, but I'm just not the target audience for that specific change to the game. As far as other game recommendations, obviously I recommend Seven Wonders and Seven Wonders Duel. If you like this game, I definitely recommend checking those out as being great, fairly accessible games that aren't that much more difficult, but offer a lot more depth to the experiences. And if you're looking for something that maintains this level of pure accessibility, only a page of rules, but a little bit more rewarding in my opinion, then Century Golem Edition or Century Spice Road, those would be excellent choices to check out as well. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, have a good one.